Welcome to the Jet Afterburners podcast, New York Jets Stand 16. And I'm about to introduce you guys. Again, this is brand new. This is a series that we're trying to get health back here. But I just want to preface here that this series is about NFL fans on how they can cope with not having football on any longer until August. I am no doctor or nutritionist. I like to use this platform as an out-of-the-box health perspective in which the ultimate decision is yours, and you should always consult with your physician. But I do know who is a doctor. You may have seen him on the famous Joe Rogan podcast episode, number 1050 to be exact. And he also has his own YouTube channel. I believe it is called Dr. Baker Podcast, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. He has an impressive background in transformation. He is a lifelong multi-sport elite level athlete and medical doctor who served as a combat trauma surgeon and chief of orthopedics while deployed to Afghanistan with the United States Air Force. His focus in recent years has been on using nutrition as a tool for health performance and overall well-being. And again, he is the chief medical officer at Rivero, promoting health through diet. The ever so informative and King Carnivore himself, Shawn Baker. Welcome to the show.
Hey, man, I appreciate having that. The music got me fired up, man. I was listening to your music and ready to go. So I like that. Hats off for that.
You know what? Before I even dive into this, I just want to thank you for your service. That's number one, first and foremost. First and foremost, because that means a lot to me. It hits home for veterans and whatnot. We're actually going to be doing a second annual Honoring the Veterans show next month. And just the thought of it, that you put your life for me, for my family, for the United States of America. I honor you, man, and I salute you.
Well, I mean, I appreciate it. I feel fortunate that I was able to serve, and I had the ability to do so. But yeah, a lot of people, certainly gave a lot more than I did. But yeah, a good experience. I really like the military. Good people, good folks. I think they don't get enough credit. And thanks for reminding folks that.
Absolutely. And now to get into your health lifestyle, being in the military and that mindset, where did that mindset start from of, I got to be in shape, I got to be disciplined, this is where my life is heading?
I think from a young kid, really. I remember, and it's kind of funny, I made this, I kind of wrote this in my book and the editor took it out, but so you're reading the book and I had some stuff that was removed from editing. But when I was, I think 8 or 9 year old kid, I remember watching Bruce Jenner win the Olympics, win the decathlon. This is back in, I think, 76. I would have been about 9 years old then. And that was inspiring to me, and then I joke later that he's no longer inspiring me in his current, for he, she, or whatever, what he's up to these days. But I just was attracted to athleticism and just seeing what your body was capable of. And so I've been, I've had a lifelong passion with sports and athletics and seeing what I could do, as far as what the capacities were. So I've been certainly into that around, I think, I started to like science, somewhere, middle school, probably because I had a really attractive middle school science teacher named Mrs. Hayes, who later became a stewardess, but maybe that's why. But I thought I figured out by about 16, I wanted to be a doctor, and, of course made that happen. Went to medical school and so on and so forth. But got sidetracked with sports for a while, then came back into medicine. But I've always been, just competitive with most things in life. I'm very, I just got that competitive drive in really in every aspect. But I mean, I really, even though I'm old at this point, I still enjoy it. I still have a lot of fun.
So it's obvious that you took nutrition very seriously. But what prompted you to take that next level of taking this by storm, where, again, you had even Joe Rogan calling you and say, come over. Now, I remember watching an episode of Joe Rogan, and this was before you went on, and someone had said about the carnivore diet, and Joe Rogan had the famous quote of saying, would it kill you to have a piece of broccoli? But then when he had you on and you educated him on it, it was his pictures before and after all cut up, and his focus, he's focused as it is. The guy is tremendous. But what inspired you to go on this lifestyle?
Well, I mean, it was kind of the culmination of almost a decade long journey of just kind of figuring out how to get healthier myself. I mean, as I mentioned, I've been an athlete my whole life. I've always trained hard. I've always worked out. So that was never, I was never lacking in that regard. And I was able to, win world championships in 3 different sports. And so I kind of know how to train and know how to train my body effectively so I can still function well. But by the time I was in my mid 40s, I just wasn't feeling that good. I mean, I could just feel like, and I was working as a surgeon, so I'm pretty busy with that. And I was like, okay, let's focus more on it. My goals in nutrition prior to that were just eat enough food, eat enough protein. I'm a strength athlete. I need to support that. So I was doing that pretty well. But when it came to like what's optimal for my overall health, then I had to refine things. And so I went on, like I said, about a 10-year journey where I played with different strategies. One was the low fat, high vegetable, lean protein, the diet that a lot of people will recommend. And I have to be honest, that did work for me to lose weight and to get leaner. However, I was so damn miserable doing that. I mean, I was just hungry all the time. I couldn't, I just, I'm a pretty disciplined guy. And that was like too much for me. I was like, I cannot live this way where I'm hungry all the time, always thinking about food, always restricting myself. That was something I just knew I couldn't maintain. And then doing all the extra exercise I had to do to do what I wanted to do. So I kind of just started learning about nutrition. I ended up doing a paleo approach for a while, for a couple of years, and I went low carb and ketogenic and did that for 3 or 4 years. And then I ran across this group of crazy people doing all meat, and I thought they were friggin' nuts. I said, you guys are completely crazy. This makes no sense to me. What about scurvy? Of course. What about, all the fiber you need? What about, the vegetables? And, they were just like, look, it doesn't seem like we need them and we're doing well. And they had some pretty compelling before and after type things that I, as a physician, was intrigued by. I'm curious. I'm like, well, this seems interesting. So in 2016, I decided to try it. So this is 9 years ago, right?
Mhm.
And, I was like, I did it for 30 days and I was like blown away how good I felt. Because I was fit. I just turned 50 at that time. And I got a lot of mileage on me from athletics. I mean, professional rugby and Highland Games and powerlifting and training hard for decade after decade, you get beat up a little bit. And I was amazed at how little I ached, or the aches and pains that I'd had on a day-to-day basis basically went away, which was really good because then I could train again. I was like, okay, now I can train hard again. So that's what got me interested. And then, as you mentioned, I convinced 100 people. I remember it was in 2017. I convinced 100 people to try it for 90 days. And we recorded everything. I mean, we recorded, weights and waist size and heart rate and all the subjective stuff, even bowel movements. We recorded all that stuff for these people, put it on a website, called it N equals many, because a lot of people say N equals one experiment. It's not relevant for anybody else. I said, well, let's see a bunch of people do it, see what happens. And on average, the average person lost 30 pounds. It was 14 kilograms. I remember their heart rate dropped by about 10 beats per minute. Their waist size went down about, 8 centimeters. So about 3 inches. Their, everything subjectively got better. Sleep, digestion, joint pain, mental focus, mood, libido. I mean, everything, skin, everything got better for them. So at this point I was like, well, this is really interesting because it's not just me. It's not just a few people. It seems to be a lot of people where this can be effective for. And then that's when, back in 2017, Rogan asked me to come on. And then of course that has a lot of exposure. And then, of course the publisher then asked me, would you please write a book about this? And then I said, well, I'm going to call this the carnivore diet because it was called zero carb at the time, which was kind of confusing for people because people were like, well, does that mean I can have Diet Coke and can I have, canola oil and it's because there's no carbs? And they're like, no, it's mostly meat. And I said, well, this is called a damn carnivore diet. It makes more sense. It's a little more descriptive of what people were eating. And, so then obviously a lot of people got interested in it. Now there's, hundreds of thousands of people have done this now. And Rogan, I was on Rogan the second time. I was on again you mentioned episode 1050. I was on again in, I think it was 2069. And it was interesting because the first time I went on, he was pretty skeptical, like everybody is, like I would be. The second time I went on there, he was like totally cheerleader, man. He was like, man, this stuff works great. Everybody I talked to does wonderful on it. And he was really, he's become a proponent for it, which is kind of cool, having a big voice like that. And now these days, there are a lot of people that do. Now, there's still a lot of people that hate it. I mean, and I get it. I mean, there's people that, balanced diet and this and that. But I'm a physician, right? And my focus is getting people not sick. I mean, I think that's what it is. And I know that I can take somebody with Crohn's disease. I can take somebody with depression. I can take somebody with psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, diabetes, and do this intervention. And very often it just goes in remission, which is, I mean, that is really exciting. And thankfully, more and more research is being done in this area. We're getting more and more done. Some of it's kind of overlapping with some of the ketogenic research, but it's happening. We're changing. So it's a fun time.
Now, as far as healing, when you started going on it for those 30 days and whatnot, was it instantaneously, like the first 7 days? What were the certain facets that you started, this is interesting. This is a little bit different than your typical keto diet, your paleo, your Atkins. I just want to dive into that. What was that catalyst where you started thinking, this is way different?
Well, when I was on it, because I came to it from basically a ketogenic diet, for the most part. And so I'd already experienced satiety. Ketogenic diets can be fairly satiating, in a different way than a higher carb diet can be. So I'd had that. The biggest thing that I noticed fairly soon on was my change in the digestion, because normally, I would eat food, you'd eat it, and maybe a little later, you'd have a little bit of swelling or, discomfort, a little bit of bloating, go to the toilet. You kind of know, you just kind of realize, you just kind of had an impression that you're digesting your food. And I noticed that when I went carnivore, it was like, there's nothing going on. It was just like total silence. There was no pain, no discomfort, no perception of digestion at all was occurring. It was just like, it's like, if you're driving around in a beat up Chevy Malibu with a cracked windshield, and a door that's wonky, driving down a highway and you hear all the wind rushing in, and then you go in a luxury, a super, luxury German sedan with everything tight. It's like the difference. It was like, wow, this is really smooth. So that was the first thing I noticed. Now, on the negative side, I remember I had like this, for about a week, I had this like mild, just like headache. It was like, I got a little bit of a headache. And I think it was because I was a little dehydrated and I didn't realize it at the time. I noticed that my energy was pretty good. I mean, it was just consistent and stable, which is what you'd expect. I mean, you've got a more slow burning source of energy rather than a rapid on, rapid off, like you do with carbohydrates. So that was something I noticed. But the thing that really was probably the most exciting thing to me was the fact that I'd had, pretty bad tendonitis in my right quadriceps for a solid decade. I was squatting one day. I had like 500 pounds on my back of squatting, and I felt a little tear in my quad tendon. And I think I had a partial tear, and it just bothered me. Not all the time, but it was like, if I sat in a car too long, my knee bent, it would hurt. If I ran too hard or jumped too much, it would hurt. And then I couldn't train for a couple of days, or I didn't want it. I was in pain. And that was something that I was just like, well, that's what being 40s like. That's what being 50s like. I just assumed that was the case. Well, that went away. And I was like, and I, as an orthopedic surgeon, I mean, I understand tendon pathology. I understand the different modalities we have to treat this. And I tried all the things to treat it, and nothing really worked well. Not at all, really. I mean, it was just like, okay, I'm stuck with this. I'll just make do. I'll just kind of train around it, work around it when it bugs me. That went away completely. And then I'm like, wow, I can really train. And at this time I had taken up a sport called, it was rowing, basically. It was indoor rowing competition. There's 50,000 people around the world that do this stuff. A lot of the Olympic rowers in the off season will train on these Concept 2s. And so I hopped on that and started training. Actually, I'd been training for a few years prior to that, and I was actually an American record holder on the sport. But when I went carnivore, I mean, it was a huge power boost. It was like almost like a 10% improvement in my output. And I was already the American record holder. So it's like 10% beyond that is huge. You talk about elite level athletics. If somebody gets a 10% difference, you're like, wow, that's amazing. It's like steroids. It's almost like that. I mean, I've never taken steroids. I don't take them. I'm not a fan of those, but so I was like, so then I broke like 3 world records, 6 months into my carnivore journey. And since that time I've broken, I don't know how many world records on this. I just broke one a couple of weeks ago. So, that was kind of the start for me. And obviously I'm a proponent of it. And obviously I've been, anyway, we can talk about some of this other stuff, but that's kind of my beginning, what really started me on this path.
It just blows me away. And I know people that are watching right now, a lot of them, they might have second thoughts and like, oh, this is way extreme. This is too extreme. But like, if you look at the standard American diet, to me, it can't get any more extreme than that. What I've noticed going through this, and this, again, I've been through it since November, my testosterone level through the roof, my energy levels, it is so constant. And I'm just, wow, why isn't this promoted more from physicians? Is there like an occult kind of hand out there occluding people from knowing the truth?
Well, I mean, there's obviously, what gets out in the media is dependent upon the advertisers in many ways. I mean, that's just the way media works. There has been certainly a push in recent times to sort of demonize meat, to get people to shift to this sort of plant-based, it's really processed food-based, cheap product diet. It's so they can sell, more crappy food at a higher markup. I mean, this is ultimately what they're trying to do there. But I mean, I think the problem is with physicians in particular is they are just oblivious. I mean, as a physician who deals with, I mean, you'd think a physician was there to get people healthy. And that's really not what we're trained to do. I mean, we're there to prescribe medications, to do procedures, to order tests. And that's kind of our niche. And we may appreciate sleep and exercise and nutrition and say that's important, but we're not experts in it. We're like, okay, that, get good sleep, maybe a few people have a few things, but that you're just such a narrow window of health is what medicine is. And medicine, and again, we're kind of siloed into this thinking that for one, like cholesterol, well, red meat, if we eat a lot of meat or fat, our cholesterol might go up and therefore we're at risk for heart disease. So we don't want to do that. So we want to eat cardboard and leaves. I'm kind of being a little facetious here, but I mean, it's like, eat this low fat, grain-based vegetable diet, and that's the best option. But the reality is, it's like, and I made a comment on this today. It's like a conventionally trained physician will say low carb diets can be associated with high cholesterol. High cholesterol can be associated with heart disease. Therefore, you should not do a low carb diet. Someone who has a little bit more insight, a little bit more critical thinking skills, they haven't been sort of brainwashed by pharmaceutical industry, or they're kind of under the spell. And like a lot of physicians, just like I said, they're like semi-lobotomized because they're just like, they just can't, their just brain only holds so much information, or it's tightly controlled. So you should say, okay, you're on a low carb diet. Is it helping you? And for many people, it's like, yes, it's life-saving. Literally, it's getting me off medications. I feel the best I have in maybe decades. Then if your cholesterol is going up, well, we don't have a lot of data on that population. We just don't. We don't have data on low carb healthy people with high cholesterol. There's a little data out there that's now, and almost all of that data would suggest that high cholesterol in that case is not an increased risk factor. Now, so with that in mind, you could say, well, the data that we have in your population seems to suggest that maybe this isn't the problem we think it is. We should monitor it and maybe just keep an eye on things. And that's probably a better approach. But the average physician doesn't have that level of insight. And so this is one of the things I'm excited about. I'll just put a plug in for our company, Rivero. I mean, our doctors all get this stuff. They understand the nuances that different diets have impacting people's labs, how standard reference ranges may not be applicable in all situations. And so that's a really important distinction that you have to know that. And then beyond that, just having physicians that know how to interpret things, and then having a support team. I mean, we've got people that support people 7 days a week if needed. We got coaches and an entire support team assigned to our patients, so they can get get all the information, the support, the accountability, the motivation on a daily basis if they need that, so they can actually hopefully put their disease in remission, get off their meds. And that's really, I think, how medicine should, evolve for some of this stuff.
So it seems like we've been fooled, right, with the high cholesterol and all that, right? I mean,
I think again, I think it depends on the context. I think for the average American who's overweight, obese, metabolically sick, which is most of us, higher cholesterol is probably an issue, right?
Mhm.
But the problem is, and in that case, it's like, well, just put everybody on a drug. They can lower their cholesterol. Maybe they bring their heart disease risk down a little bit. You haven't addressed the other underlying issues, the metabolic disease, insulin resistance, the obesity. That's what you got to take care of. Those are probably in many ways, many people would argue that those are the real, true, significant drivers of cardiovascular disease. And cholesterol is just kind of one of these, moderately important, independent, or dependent risk factors. And I know a lot of people they'll have a lot of heartburn with that statement. But I mean, that's seems to be what we're finding out, right? And there's a lot of studies that will support what I'm saying. Of course, a lot of people will point to, well, there's a relationship between cholesterol and heart disease, and this is what the epidemiologic study shows, and therefore, on a population level, we recommend all these people get statins. And that's, again, when you're treating populations and making broad sweeping recommendations, that's different than treating individuals. It's like, you don't, if you say, oh, I'm gonna make this general comparison about all animals need this, and then you're saying, well, what about donkeys?
Mhm.
Well, donkeys, you see what I'm saying? It's like individual unique populations have to be handled with enough insight into what's going on so you can actually treat them effectively.
That's a great point, because I wanted to kind of dive into, let's say, a normal individual. Again, I'm 43, and I have thought and think continuously, very clearly, no brain fog or anything like that. I took a blood test, and cholesterol was high, like high considered to them, what, 220 or something, 230. Mm-hmm. But isn't that part of the healing mechanism for a cognitive function of the brain? Doesn't the brain need cholesterol?
Well, all of our cells need cholesterol. Every cell in our body has cholesterol in its membrane. So cholesterol is a very important molecule, not only for cellular membrane, integrity. It's also important for hormone production. It's important for the immune system. So it's something that's there for a reason. And 220 total cholesterol, in recent years, 20 years ago, no one would have even batted an eye at that. 30 years
Right.
ago, 40 years ago, no one would have batted an eye at 250,
Exactly.
260. It's just that, over time, we've seen, well, cholesterol is bad. We need to lower it. And then we lower it, and then everybody's still sick. So we're like, we got to lower it some more. Well, everybody's still sick. And we keep doubling down on stuff that hasn't worked. The average American's cholesterol over the last 50 years is literally down 20 points. That on average, on a population average. Our heart disease, the fact that heart disease is the number one killer has not changed because of that, right? So, you have to say, well, maybe we're barking up the wrong tree or something, or maybe we need to look in some other trees as well. And that has been, up to this point, not really the case. Now, what I will tell you is, because of the profitability, the potential profit, well, not potential, it's going to be profitable. These GLP-1 drugs, the Ozempics and so on and so forth, being used for, obviously weight loss and diabetes, but they're going to find that because of it's addressing some of these other issues, it's going to have a net positive effect on cardiovascular disease. That's not an advertisement to be on these drugs, but it's saying, what are those drugs doing? Well, people are not eating as much garbage because they're nauseous all the time. They can't, they're just full, and they don't want to eat the stuff. But what if you just didn't do that? You wouldn't need to be on the drugs. You wouldn't be subject to all this potential side effects and the long-term potential negative consequences. And so, but because they can make another, $500 billion or $1 trillion, they're going to start pushing that one really, really hard. And you're going to start hearing, like I said, the cause of the problem, the scientific consensus, and I'm using that word very loosely, the scientific consensus will be whatever the most financially profitable solution is. Right. So if we say this is a major cause of disease because we can make a lot of money if we sell drugs for it, then that's the cause of the disease. And if they say, well, we can make more money over here, so now we're going to say this is the cause of the disease, and you're going to see that. You're going to see a shift in there. I've said that 5 years ago, and that's what's coming. That's what's happening. So, yeah, I can't remember. Oh yeah, but so cholesterol, yeah, I think it's one of those things where, and this is the thing, because we've demonized such nourishing food. I mean, red meat, eggs, dairy products. I mean, they're so nourishing to our body. I mean, it's not a coincidence that everything I need to function as a human from protein, fat standpoints is found in meat. I mean, It's like, that's not a coincidence. All the essential amino acids are found in the concentrations I need them in the right ratios. That's not like coincidence. It's like, it's because we're literally designed to eat that stuff. And I think the fact that we've been demonizing that for, profit for other stuff is really been harming people.
But isn't it also the experience and the journey? Like I don't want to harp on people taking Ozempic and also the gastric bypass. I get it. Every situation is a little bit different. I just look at it sometimes, the journey that I'm on, and I've seen so many testimonies on carnivore that it was life-changing, how it is to me. Like my mindset is completely changed. And I was also thinking about Ozempic, Wegovy. I was also thinking about gastric bypass. It was like the easy solution to the symptom, not the main issue of I'm done eating. That's it. I don't need to eat more and more. I kid you not. I've been on this OMAD one a day meal since November. And that's it. This is, so illuminating, Dr. Baker. Beyond, like I have never had this control back. What do you think about the people saying, you know what, I'm just going to cut corners and go the Ozempic route?
Well, I think for a small minority of the people that utilize those drugs, it'll be a net benefit. I think for the vast majority of the people, chronically, long-term results will be suboptimal. I mean, you've got to eventually address the issue. I mean, if this is kicking the can down the road a little bit, yes, you might lose 20, 30 pounds. Probably what'll happen is you might, actually have more fat cells, but they're smaller. So you lose weight, but you get more fat cells and you lose muscle mass. This is, you can potentially mitigate those things by working out, eating a lot of protein and changing your diet, which you should be doing just anyway. You wouldn't need the drugs in many ways. So, it's one of those things is like, if you're willing to go on the drug and do the right things, then you probably could just do the right things and not need the drug. But if you're not willing to do the right things, then what's going to happen is you're going to be a smaller version of yourself. You're going to have less muscle. You're going to have, by percentage wise, you're going to have more fat tissue. And then when you go off the drugs for whatever reason, it costs too much, you can't tolerate the side effects or whatever, then you're going to be in a worse position. And it's a lot harder to put on muscle than it is put fat back on. So it's like, you're going to be hungry again. You're going to put on a bunch of fat. You're going to have less muscle than you started with. And so now you basically aged yourself prematurely, and so the other, the assumption is you're just going to be on this drug for the rest of your life,
right?
For the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years, however many years you have left in your life, you're going to take a shot every week at $1,000 a month for the rest of your life. That's what is that? $15,000 a year for the rest of your life. There are better ways for sure. But it's part of its education, part of its, as you notice, when you're eating high quality, highly nutritious, satiating food, that food noise, that distraction, cravings often just go away, which is really cool.
I used to sit down by the dinner table and I would be scarfing down my food. I wouldn't even know what it tasted like. I would look across the table, look at my kids. And so sadistically, I'd be like, if they don't eat it, I'm going to eat it. Now I sit down, and just like your videos here, I want to pull this up here because for those that don't know, you have amazing videos as such. I'm going to show you this. You take a moment out of your busy time. You put on, let me see here. Oh, right here. Let me just bring this up here. And you're eating an enormous steak. Love this. Right here. You can see it, right?
Yeah.
I love this.
Listen to Dr. McDougall talk about sugar. Yeah.
And it should have been straightened out in the 1920s when a fellow by the name of Percival Hemsworth published his basic research, and it was all published by 1940 in the British Medical Journal. And it's just no question about it. Fat, we're talking about pig fat, cow fat, olive fat, paralyzes insulin, increases insulin needs. Carbohydrate, including pure white sugar, increases the sensitivity to insulin. It was published by Brunzell from the University of Washington in the New England Journal of Medicine in, I think, 78. Brunzell's his name. He took type 2 diabetics. He made a synthetic diet, 45% sugar, and then doubled white sugar, maltodextrose, plain table sugar, doubled it to 85% white sugar. Every aspect of the diabetes improved. Important thing for.
So I need to know, and I got to get into your mind on that. Please elaborate.
With regard to what I'm doing there, or his particular commentary?
What he was saying, what you were doing made me hungry. Like, I normally eat once a day. After seeing that, I had to have another steak after seeing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, just from the perspective of what those videos, so, sometimes like the first time I did one of those, it was like somebody making some vegan steak and it was like 70 ingredients. And it was just like ridiculous. I said, I'm just going to eat a regular steak and laugh. And so that's kind of been a thing. I just bunch of videos, meat and steak, and listening to wackos talk about crazy stuff. Yeah. That guy his name is John McDougall. Now, unfortunately, Dr. McDougall passed away, I think a year ago at age 77, and he was very frail. Broke his hip in his late 60s, and shattered his femur, shattered his pelvis, probably because he's osteoporotic, because he believed in a starch solution was his whole thing, and he was under protein and probably just didn't have enough animal fats. But there was some case reports back in the early days of, I think Walter Kempner was on this high sugar rice diet, and he used to have to whip people to keep them compliant. I mean, it was a really bizarre, way that he did that. And there was another guy that I can't remember the guy's name. He did something similar, and he ended up committing suicide. I mean, so it's just like, in the short term, the thought is that, this is what we hear from the vegan camps, that saturated fat will lead to insulin resistance. And there is a hint of truth to that. And like most things, it's like they put a little kernel of truth and they surround it by lack of information, so you don't get the full picture. And the reality is that saturated fat in your blood does not come from the saturated fat you eat. It comes from your liver. Your liver makes that in response to excessive energy, right? So if you have too much carbs, too much fat, whatever, your liver will then convert something, some of those molecules into something called palmitic acid, which is a type of saturated fat, and then that will lead to insulin resistance. Now, it doesn't come from pig fat or cow fat like he's talking. It comes from excess energy in general. Now, what happens when you go on a carnivore diet, and you're very familiar with this? You just don't overeat. You just tend to lose weight. So as long as you're not overeating and putting on body fat, that's total nonsense what he's talking about there. So, and then we know, for instance, that diabetics, I mean, this is clear as can be. I mean, when you put diabetics on low carb diets, ketogenic diets, carnivore diets, their diabetes goes in remission. I mean, it's not just that their blood glucose normalizes, which is a lot of people say, well, that's just masking the symptoms. What you start to see is their kidney function gets better. Their eyes, if they have diabetic retinopathy, that starts to reverse. I mean, every aspect of the disease goes away. Their fatty liver goes away. So this isn't just, masking the symptoms. This is actually seeing reversal of disease there. So, I mean, this is one of those things where, yes, I mean, it's like saying this, yes, my insulin function will become more robust if I eat a whole bunch of sugar. That's true. But it's like saying, if I drink a bunch of alcohol, I get better at metabolizing alcohol, and it's like, well, okay, that's true. But does it mean you need to be pounding a bunch of alcohol all the time? No, it doesn't mean that. So it's kind of one of these, yes, it's a fact, but what's the overall context to that? And I think that's a real a problem, because, if you put a diabetic on a high sugar diet, they're going to have problems. I mean, they're going to be in the ER with diabetic hyperglycemia. They're going to have blood glucose at 600. I mean, it's crazy.
You know what? That's a great segue to my next question here. Do you feel that food companies in general engineer their products to become so addictive that they know it causes harm in the long term, or do they just not care? They just want you to buy their products.
Well, I can tell you with 100% certainty that some food companies absolutely engineer their food to be addictive. In fact, I had an employee, a scientist for one of those companies, called me up a couple of years ago wanting to work for me. This is a gal that was a food chemist, and she said, "Look, I've spent my whole career making food as addictive as possible," and she felt tremendous remorse and guilt about that because that was her job. So they absolutely know they make it addictive. I mean, we know that the tobacco companies bought the food companies, and their MO was, hey, let's get everybody addicted to this stuff. So they absolutely know it's addictive. They almost undoubtedly know it's harmful. I mean, but at the end of the day, hey, money. It's about money. It's about shareholders. It's about making a profit. And, and they would argue, hey, people don't have to eat it. We're not holding a gun to their head. They can eat if they want. They don't want to eat it. They don't have to eat it. The problem is when you flood the market with all this hyper palatable processed garbage, and that's 80%, 90% of the grocery store, and it's cheap and it's got a good shelf life and you market the hell out of it. I mean, it's hard. I mean, can you imagine if heroin were legal and it were everywhere and it were super cheap and your grandmother gave it to you? We would all be heroin addicts. I mean, and that's effectively what we have. These foods literally, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, these foods are literally recreational drugs. I mean, this is how you have to treat them. These are literally recreational drugs. All these ultra processed junk foods, they're designed that way. They act like that. And if you start to appreciate them for that, then you'll say, hey, look, do I need this? Do I need what this is going to give me? Because there's plenty of good food out there. There's plenty of good food that'll nourish us, that won't cause all these side effects that these things do.
Now, I wanted to ask this question. I want to be as delicate as possible. Could it be possible that the agricultural industries, food companies, and even the pharmaceutical companies have a hand-in-hand kind of shake agreement? You help me, I help you, so we can pump this money as much as we can. It doesn't matter of the health of the people. Again, these high-processed food companies, the more you eat, the more insulin you're going to need from the pharmaceuticals.
Well, I mean, if you look at like Bayer, who bought Monsanto, Bayer is a pharmaceutical company, Monsanto is a food company. I mean, they own each other. I mean, they share each other's boards. I mean, of course, I mean, they're all in it together. I mean, they all stand to make money from this, and so it's a very good model. I mean, I mean, it's for sure. I mean, the problem, the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, whose job is to basically sell commodity crops, wheat, corn, soybeans, on and on and on. Also gives us dietary recommendations. So what do you think they're going to recommend if their job is to sell wheat, corn, and soybeans? That crap. And if the processed food companies pay their scientists to make recommendations, which they do, which we know they do, right? The 2020 guidelines, 95% of them all had conflicts of interest from food companies. So I mean, it's corrupt as can be. Hopefully Kennedy will get in there and remove that. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I mean, it's a real problem. And I guess part of the problem is it's like there are a lot of people in the world. There's 8 billion people on the planet. You got to feed them something. And they'll just say, hey, look, we've lowered the cost of the food. We fed the whole planet. Give ourselves a pat on the back. We did what you asked us to do. Starvation in most of the world is largely, a history. Now we have malnourishment, but everybody's fat. It's a different issue. But I mean, it's like, but I mean, their incentives are to make money and pump out cheap food. And I mean, it's like, because you think every single year, thousands of new food products are created. You go to these big food expos. This year, we got the newest flavor of this and the newest taste sensation. We've got this new engineered food that no one's ever heard of before. Do we need any more food? No. I mean, do we need any more food products? No, I would argue we had all the food we needed 1,000 years ago. I mean, honestly, I mean, we just need more volume of it, but we don't need new individually. And when you start seeing food that's bright blue and hot pink, and it's just like, what the hell are we eating? It's crazy.
Well, I always figured, do they have it down to a science where people are so trapped? Because I know there was no escape. I would wake up in the morning, I would look in the mirror, I would not like what I saw. And I'm like, you know what? Today's the day I'm going to change. But by the middle of the day, I was going to a pizzeria. And then at the end of the day, I was going to like a Chinese food store, got home, eating garbage food. And it was constant. And, the people that I was surrounding myself with as well, it was, let's go out for beers, let's go out. It was just like you wanted to separate yourself and go the healthy route, but it was nearly damn impossible to do so until you really hit a certain point in life where you're right in the middle of a fork in the road. Like, where do I go? Why is it so difficult, especially in the United States of America, where obesity runs high? Why is it so deliberately done to the civilians of this country?
Well, I think that, obviously there's a lot of money to be made, for one. I mean, that's the thing. And then, we sort of, as Americans, we're proud of the fact that we have choice. We have a lot of freedoms. And I think a lot of people would say that's a good thing. And then some people will hide behind that and say, well, you don't want to limit someone's choice. If they want to poison themselves, let them. That's fine. Sir, it's just up to them. But the problem is, this food, again, it's engineered to be addictive, which I think that is a real problem. And then the problem is the solution that the physicians have been trained to say is a shitty solution. It's like, oh, well, you should eat a low-fat diet with lots of cardboard and salad. And, I'm being a little facetious there, calling fiber cardboard, and no one likes it. There's no energy in it. So it's like, I'm not satisfied with that. A few people can do it, but most people will fail. So they give them the device, they give advice. They say, well, people try a healthy diet. It doesn't really work. So the only option left is to give them all these drugs. Right. And so this is the sort of the paradigm we're in. Doctors are trained that diet doesn't really work, even though you're supposed to do diet, but it doesn't really work. So, give it a little bit of an effort. And if it doesn't work, stick them on the drugs. We're trained that, meat is bad for us. How dare you eat that? But the reality is meat keeps you from eating that garbage. I mean, if you eat a lot of meat, you just don't want crap. The problem is the doctor tells you don't eat a lot of meat. The food companies, tell you, oh, eat our yummy food and everything in moderation. And, you deserve a little treat. Why don't you deserve a break today? Here's your reward. You worked hard. You need a Snickers bar. You worked hard. You need a Frosty, or, you name it. I mean, there's this belief system out there. And I would say, if you want to reward yourself, give yourself some health, go enjoy what you can do instead of just poisoning yourself on a regular basis. You're definitely battling a system that is designed for you to fail, for sure.
And you touched on something just now, and it was a key word: moderation. I think we've been conditioned all of our lives, eat in moderation, eat in moderation. But if you're addicted to a substance, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever the case is, there is no limit. There is no, all right, I'll have it a little bit this week. I think sugar is in the same category as drugs. Like, I know for me personally, I can't have cake. I can't, because I know it opens Pandora's box. Now, could it happen that maybe I'm 6-7 years into the carnivore and I could have a little bit? Like, I want to ask you with that, like, your journey on this carnivore way of life, because it's not a diet anymore to you. This is the way of life. And I commend that. Do you sometimes have, all right, you know what? I'm at a birthday party. I'm just at someone's house, a get together. Do you give yourself that option to say, okay, I'll have a little bit and go back onto the carnivore style of life? Or do you say no, or you just choose?
I'm not religious about this diet. I am very much, I do what works for me. And I eat meat every day. I mean, I've been doing it for 9 years. I every day I eat 2-3 pounds of steak. I mean, that's just, I don't even think about that, right? If I'm traveling, if I'm in a situation where I don't have that access to that, I'll either fast if I'm not that hungry, if I don't need to. Like if I'm traveling, a lot of times if I fly internationally and I'm on a plane for 12, 16 hours, I'm like, I'm just sitting there. I'm not doing anything. Why do I don't even need to eat. There's no really reason for me. I'm not even burning any energy. So I just tend to not eat. Like I said, my diet over the years has been a lot of steak, probably 95% steak. I've probably, without exaggeration, in the last 9 years, I've probably eaten close to 10,000 steaks. I mean, and that's not an exaggeration. You think about it, 2, 3, 4 steaks a day, every day, 365 days a year times 9 years. I mean, that's, something like 9,000, 10,000. I mean, I'll have some eggs from time to time. I'll have a little bit of dairy from time to time. I'll eat some fish here and there. That's pretty much it. Every once in a while, I'll have something that's not, quote, carnivore. I mean, I might have a piece of fruit, a few times a year, maybe, I'm not, like I said, and generally it's not that I necessarily desire it that much. It's not like I'm craving anything. I'll have a piece of cake once in a great while. But it's just like, I just don't need that stuff. It used to be, I mean, in the past, like everybody else is, it was like, what's for dessert? You eat your dinner. What do you get for dessert?
Yeah.
We've been trained to think that, and then, breakfast is dessert. Where's my muffin? Where's my bran muffin? Where's my syrup, my sweetened cereal? What's my dessert for lunch? What's my dessert for dinner? That I don't have that anymore. That's gone, and it's really, it's liberating in a way. I mean, it's not that I don't find those things good. And if suddenly tomorrow chocolate cake and Reese's Pieces or Reese's peanut butter cups were total health foods, and I would eat those things. I mean, hell yeah, I'd eat that stuff. But it's not. I mean, it's garbage for us. It's literally making us sick, and I'm not interested in that. I mean, I guess I'm at a point in my life. I'm almost 60 years old, and I was like, man, I've eaten damn near everything I want to eat. I've tasted pretty much everything. I don't need to taste the latest blue food. I could care less about that. And I mean, it's just like, it's like listening to music. I mean, you got classical music that's been around for 500 years. It still sounds pretty good, and then you got the latest, pop music that comes and goes. It's just like really flash in the pan. And 5 years from now, what song was that? I don't remember that. But anyway, so I again, I think it's real important to have solid definitions about what a carnivore diet is, because it has therapeutic potentials, and you need to know, like, if we're saying, hey, we're going to go on a carnivore diet, and we think this is what it does. And then you got people saying, well, sourdough bread, a little bit of fruit and honey and this and that, and add this and some vegetables and fermented foods. It really dilutes the effectiveness of it for certain conditions. And so, I mean, it's not to say those things are bad. Yeah, if you want to have fermented vegetables and it works for you, go for it. I could care less. I hope it works for you, and I hope it makes you feel better. But I mean, it's important to have some narrow definitions so that when we're talking about, we can compare apples to apples rather than, like you do. Somebody says, well, I did carnivore and it worked well or it didn't work. Well, how did you do it? Well, I was having, on the weekends I was eating, hamburgers and I had cheat days, and I was having sourdough and blueberries 3 times a week. I'm like, well, that's a little different. So we don't know what you're talking about. So it's important to, it's important to have definitions, but it's also important not to be rigid in your thinking.
So those seldom times that you do introduce like a piece of fruit into your diet, just, that once or twice a year, how is your energy levels? Doesn't those cravings come back, or is it the point that you're so carnivorous at that point? You're like, all right, I had my fruit. Now I got to bring that sugar level right back down. How's your process?
I do notice that if I have any significant exposure to carbohydrate, that I start perseverating about food a lot more. I start thinking about food a lot more. I become hungrier. It's more present in my mind, So yes, I think for me personally, I do better without it. I do absolutely my best from every aspect when I'm on straight up just red meat and water. I mean, that's as crazy as it sounds. I feel my best. I sleep my best. I perform my best. That for me is the best. Now, I don't always do that. Sometimes I'll have some eggs. Sometimes I'll have some bacon. Sometimes I'll have a piece of fish. It's just, life is what it is, and it doesn't change what's there. I mean, none of us are perfect, and I certainly don't hold myself in that light. But I think, like I said, if you just want to be objective about what's working, and then hopefully over time you'll say, well, objectively, it makes more sense for me to do this the vast majority of the time, or as much as I possibly can. I think your quality of life is better.
Right. I just feel like fruit in itself. I remember growing up, and the fruits weren't as big. They weren't as sweet as it is now. Seedless grapes, seedless watermelon. I just feel like it's all been genetically modified. That I know for a fact, when I bite into an apple, it's the same as me biting into a Kit Kat bar. It's the same, like, chemical interactions spiking up my insulin to the max. And then I find myself in the refrigerator eating everything like the Tasmanian devil. Like I have no control. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. It's like an all or nothing. with me. And like right now, I'm kind of following what your diet. It's meat, rudiment meat, salt, water, and that's it. Once in a while, some eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sensation that you're feeling where having a small amount of carbohydrates drives this desire to eat more and more is not unusual. I think many people, and probably most people, experience that way. You know, you talk to most people that have done carnivore, and they'll say, look, if I go off the rails a little bit, sometimes it's a disaster. I mean, sometimes I just can't stop eating, and it might last for some people, it lasts for months. It's just like, you know, and then all their symptoms come back. Their joint pain comes back, their digestive issues come back, their mental health issues come back. So, I mean, it's at least good to, you know, at least you realize, hey, this clearly is the issue. So at least you have some more insight. You're educated about that. And then, you know, I mean, all we can do is educate you. I mean, you're ultimately the one that, I mean, I like to say no one's holding a gun to your head telling you what you eat, except I can tell you a little story. I had somebody hold a gun to my head and tell me I had to eat something years ago when I was down in I was in college, and you know, college stories always end badly. But I mean, I went down we decided to go to Edna, Texas, and the reason because there's got Steve Austin, the wrestler, you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
So years ago he called me up, hey man, tell me about this diet. And so I went to his house, and we did a little podcast together, and he's from Edna, Texas, and I said, Steve, I get this story about this time I was in Edna, because I went to college in Texas and Austin. And my roommate had a friend who was a rice farmer in Edna, Texas. And we decide, hey, let's go down to Edna, Texas and go hang out and drink some beers and do stupid shit, right? So we drive all the way down there at like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night or whatever. We get in there, we're sitting in the barn just doing stupid stuff. And then one of the farmhands comes in with some tamales. And you know, he spoke Spanish, probably Mexican guy. And I did not like Mexican food. I hated it because it had onions and peppers and tomatoes, and I hated all those things. I've always hated those things my whole life. And tamales were like, I don't like Mexican food. So I don't know. I was a little drunk, so I said, I don't want any of that stuff. And it offended him to the point where he pulled a gun out and pointed at me.
Oh my goodness.
He said, eat the tamales. And you know, I'm a big, strong guy. And I was like, I'm going to eat the tamales. So I ate some tamales. They were actually pretty good. I mean, I gotta say, I didn't mind them. They were okay. But outside of that, you generally don't have people pointing guns at you, telling you to eat stuff.
Literally.
Generally, most of us have a free will and allowed to eat what the hell we want. And so, but yeah, I can't remember why we started about it. But yeah, I mean, most of us, you know, we can eat what we want when we want to, and it's up to us to make those decisions.
Now, let me ask, when, again, trying to tie these loose ends here, when you first started going to carnivore, did you feel that your senses were heightened? And again, I don't want to be insensitive or whatnot, but I know that for me that there was a fight or flight feeling. Is that kind of like in war or whatnot, like your mind or catching an animal, that the hunters and gatherers, where you had to hunt, let's say a deer, as soon as you start moving the wrong direction, they hear a noise and they run. Does it heighten your senses so much to the point where it in-tunes you with nature?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to that so much. I mean, I think that, you know, you improve mentally, cognitively improve. I mean, some people say their eyesight gets better. I mean, I think there's physiological reasons. A lot of times when glucose gets normalized, believe it or not, a lot of diabetics' eyesight will get better. I've seen people say that their sense of hearing has gotten better. I mean, so I do think that, you know, when you lower inflammatory levels, things work better. So yeah, you probably are a more effective functioning human being. And yes, I mean, all of us, you know, we're designed to hunt. I mean, this is why we have a shoulder that can throw stuff, right? I mean, you know, this wasn't so we threw rocks at fruit. I mean, this was because we started throwing projectiles at animals to kill them, right? I mean, we all have this, you know, we have eyes in the front of our head. You know, we're not predators with eyes on the sides of our head. We have, you know, the capacity to stand upright and sweat and all these things that make us really effective. And then the biggest thing, of course, is our brain that gave us that ability to organize and to be tactical, you know, about hunting. And so I think when you're just functioning better, yeah, I mean, you're better at what you're designed to do.
Wow, I completely agree. I just felt like an enlightenment being on this journey. And I'm blown away by you. I have to thank you first and foremost, Dr. Baker, for taking time out. I know you're extremely busy. And just sharing your story, reading your book, following you on Instagram and social media, X, whatnot. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that really like I said, first I want to say if you're sick and you need help and you need a physician that's supportive, that's not going to just pile pills on you and wants to get to the root cause and have a whole team that's dedicated to solving issues, check out Rivero.com. We're by the time this comes out, we'll be in all 50. We're in 48 states right now. We'll be in all 50 by middle of March. So there's that. I'm on social media. My Instagram is Shawn, SHAWN Baker, Baker, and then 1967. So Shawn Baker 1967. That's the year I was born. I'm on other social media places, Shawn Baker MD. I'm on X at S Baker MD. So that's kind of where I spend a lot of time, and I'm often engaged often there. But I'm like I said, I keep pretty busy, and this is fun. I appreciate you letting me do this.
Absolutely. And all of your links will be posted in the description below. Rivero, is it in New York as well?
Yep.
All 50 I'm on states. Yep. I am on it. Absolutely. And again, I want to just give you my gratitude for you just serving this country. As I said before, it's an honor to speak to you regarding the carnivore diet, of course, but you as just serving, it's an honor.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me. And I hope this has been valuable to your audience. At least, think about it. Like what is it? Dr. Phil says, how's that been working out for you? If you've been trying the same old crap year after year and you're still, as you know, this has been life-changing for you and so many other people. There are many thousands upon thousands of people that's totally changed their life for the better.
Yeah. And we appreciate you for doing so, man, being that catalyst. Have a great night, Dr. Baker, and thank you so, so much.
Likewise. Thanks.
Quarterback, Ken O'Brien of California Davis.
Just 14 that first time, now going long. They got a wide open man, and he makes the catch. It's Braylon Edwards taking off. Braylon Edwards will take it home for the touchdown. 80.
First down in San Diego territory at the 47-yard line. Big draw. And Pennington going for 6. Deep down the field, and it's caught by Santana.